Good morning and happy Sunday. Woo! I'm so glad to be here and I'm so glad that you are too. I am super grateful for you to join with me and to connect, and so cool that we're able to do it wherever I am and wherever you are in the world. So I'm actually in Los Angeles at the beach in Santa Monica, and it's been a really interesting week. Lots of learning opportunities for me personally, and some really great growth, and able to help pass that on to you this morning. And I've been able to pass it on to a lot of other people this week, actually, various business owners that I've met with in the area, and also my clients. So I had an interesting thing happen, and I've been listening to some content that has reminded me to reconnect with some of my early life passions and ways in which I believed early on in life that I was going to help the world, that I was going to be able to contribute and give back. And one of my passions very, very early on, I would say starting somewhere around like 9 years old, was helping people who are homeless, helping people who are really down and out, struggling. And being here actually this week, I have really reconnected with that because there are a lot more people who are homeless in this area than I had expected. And I'll get into this a little bit more later, but it's an even different kind of homeless than I traditionally will say come into contact with or have thought about, or, in all my years of working with folks that are really down and out and some struggling with housing. It's different. It's different here, and it's striking me in a different way. And I want to use that to share with you this morning, really around cultivating more faith in your own life and more belief in who you are and what you're capable of, and ultimately why you're here for the time on the planet. So I was out walking. And like I said, there's definitely more people in this area who are really struggling than has been probably ever in this area. And it's something very noticeable that the business owners in this area are speaking out loudly about and being very vocal, and really struggling. There's like a sensation of that there's a sensation that the homeless have taken over when I'm out talking with people, and that people really don't know what to do. And I don't have the answers, we'll say, for the homeless problem anymore. Maybe today I probably have a little bit more of a solution or something that's helpful. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is, how does this impact you, right? And what I've picked up as I've been reconnecting in this area and reconnecting to that childhood dream of mine to help people really down and out, it's reminded me of how far people can go to being disconnected from God, being disconnected from their source, from the thing that empowers them, that encourages them, that sparks the desire to live. And like I said, because it's like an even more, like, traditionally I would have referred to it as there's like a greater sense of mental health going on here in this population of homeless. I don't think about it in those terms anymore. Again, I really see it as like this greater disconnection from God, from the source, from your motivation to be alive. And I want to just insert here, however it is that you think about God or the source of life, right? If it's the universe, whatever it is for you, spirit, insert it in when I'm talking about God. I grew up in the church, and I still very much think about that source as God. It's very different, right? And it's very evolved, as I like to think about it, from what I knew as a child. But I don't want that to ever turn you off as you're listening and you're taking in the message, because it doesn't need to. So hear it, ask questions if it doesn't fit for you. Certainly I'm open to talking that through, how to help you have it fit for you. But I'm just using some of the words that are comfortable and come with ease for me. Okay, circling back, I'm walking down the street, and like I said, I'm taking all of this in, and there happens to be, I was in this back and forth with getting a prescription filled from the local drugstore down the street. And so I was walking this path a few different times, and I walked by, and then I came back that same path. And in that few hours, there was a person on the side of the street that the police were actually picking up, wrapping up, and putting into a coroner's van. And I was like, wow, when did that happen? Like, I just walked by here, and I didn't get more details. I did have some conversation with some folks around, but it was a different conversation that evolved. But as it relates to this person, I don't know for sure whether they, we would say it was more of a natural causes thing, or if it was an incident that occurred that led to his death. But either way, it really got me thinking about how people start to choose to end their life long before they end their life, right? And that's really the way I think about it now. In my old life, I would have referred to it as suicide. And as we've witnessed so many celebrities and well-named people who have ended their life much earlier than expected, I've really come to believe that people choose long before they actually take action to actually end their life. They start to choose that long before. And that their hand is very much in the decision to end their life. And I think that shift for me in thinking about it, like it is a person it's the person's choice. They are choosing to end their life. It really helps to understand how that comes to happen for me. And I would offer it to you as consideration for how to understand that and how to use that information to help yourself live all that much more. So as I'm thinking about the homeless people here, and I'm seeing their level of desperation and their level of despair, and really their level of disconnection from God, and their no longer caring for themselves. It's such extreme behavior, like walking around in clothes that haven't been washed in ages, and or defecating on themselves, right? I mean, it's so extreme, so extreme. And when I look into their faces, I am able to see that extreme disconnection from God, right? The disconnection from the source of life, from the motivation to live, right? And I'm not even talking about surviving, because clearly they are surviving or they would not be alive. That is a true definition of surviving. Being able to still be alive in those dire circumstances is the true tell, what I call it, of surviving. So, sorry, I'm just pulling my notes up here. I don't generally, I make some notes before I get started talking, but then I allow the Spirit to just talk through me and share what most needs to get shared. But I do have a few things always written down. So looking and awareness around how far people fall from being connected to themselves, being connected to their spirit within them that is the motivation for life and the places that people can go. And for you and I, it's the places that you and I can go that are very similar to where people in the severe down and out space go, because it starts back in the places where we get overwhelmed with anxiety, with fear, with self-doubt, with uncertainty. And when you allow those states of being, those states of mind to consume you, it is the descent into hell. Right? Now, you were probably taught that hell was something that happens after you die. And I'm not here to discuss that particular topic. But I am here to discuss the hell that happens while you're alive. And again, for me, this is a new way of thinking in the last few years here. And it's really come together as if it's the thing I've fought forever, because hell is a concept that happened post-death never really made sense to me. And when I think about hell happening to me here, now, on earth, it makes perfect sense to me. Up until, I would say, like many times in my life, in the, years pre-40, I would have these periods where I would feel very consumed with anxiety, very consumed with depressed thoughts and depressed state of being. So much so that I would be like confused. How is this happening to me? Right? I'm a really good person. I'm doing all the right things in life. And I'm helping people, right? Because I was a therapist for 20 years. And I would fall into and I was going to church, and I was a very committed believer and very active in church. And yet I would have these periods where I would feel really, just essentially depressed. And I would feel very empty and unmotivated for living, unmotivated for, doing more, for being more, for finding joy. And it was very confusing. Like, how do I, as the person that I was at the time, experience these periods? Like, why is that happening? And so now as I think back on it, and I am now working with people and have been helping people for years and years and years, and I bring all of those experiences into my work now and into the way that I see life, I'm able to recognize, like, wow, if we just shift the perspective that hell is actually something that we experience here while we're alive, it makes complete sense why I would have had those periods where I felt so disconnected from God, so disconnected from my spiritual self, so disconnected from faith, from belief that things would work out, that I could have the things that I desired, that I could feel deeply loved, right? Because in those periods, I would not feel loved. I would not feel deeply connected to the other people in my world who loved me. That did not make any sense. But when I apply the concepts of what I've learned about hell being the thing that happens after death, when I apply those same concepts to the periods that I have had where I have felt that way here while I've been alive, and I look at my clients that I've worked with over the last 25 years and these periods of time where they're having this deep suffering, it makes perfect sense. They're consumed with anxiety, with self-doubt, with uncertainty, with depression, with hopelessness. That is literally the definition of hell. It is being disconnected from the source of life, disconnected from God, disconnected from your purpose, from the faith that life is working out for your good. Again, which is something that we're taught in church. And again, if you didn't grow up in church, I'm sure you've heard about it. And it's deeply saturated in our culture, this idea of like, all things being for your good, and life is meant to be good and have, joy. So to reconcile that and recognize like, oh, hell is something that happens here while we're alive. And it is simply this state of being that I can go to, that you can go to, when we disconnect ourselves from the source of life. So it's those feelings that I described of anxiety, of not feeling good enough, of feeling fearful, of feeling uncertain, of doubt, of I don't have enough money, I'm not sure if the, funds are going to come in, or I don't feel loved. I mean, at the end of the day, it's I don't feel deeply loved. And so this awareness, right, then helps you to take a look at, okay, well, now if I understand what is happening in those periods, then I can do something about it that you can feel real control and ability over. Because when we don't understand, and that was the other big thing that I had as I'm walking around and I'm seeing all these people just in such desperate states. Again, it's so interesting to be in this area that's like very rich. We would describe it, I feel like most people would describe it as a very rich area. And yet there are these people so saturated in the area who are so down and out. To be able to have that awareness of like, that is something that happens when I lose my faith, right? When I lose my sense of direction, my sense of what's possible, my sense of purpose, then you can apply it to your own life. One, for understanding. And when we have understanding and we have awareness, it is power. Because when we have awareness, we have understanding, we can actively do something about it. So it's to be able to say, like, you can understand how this whole game, this whole, life thing is played. And when you see people that are in such desperate states, it just brings this like huge magnifying glass to this awareness. Like so many people do not understand how life is played, how life operates. And when you don't understand, of course you end up in a state like these folks that I've been witnessing this week, where you're so in that desperation, you give up, you lose your sense of hope that life can be better, and you go into the base survival mode. You stop dreaming. You stop believing in like all the, fairy tale kind of magic of life. And then you're literally just trying to survive because you are now resolved to that innate desire just for the basics of life, just to stay alive. And I believe the human is built that way, with a desire, an innate desire to stay alive. But it is not how we're intended to live. We're intended to live knowing who we are, right? Knowing that we have the divine inside of us, that we have God inside of us, and that we are meant to be powerful and courageous and living, being in our purpose, being able to contribute to the world, to the greater good, the advancements of the world. And so if you're not in that space, you don't feel that level of power and excitement and courage and contribution, then you're somewhere in that state of being disconnected from the power, from the source of life, from God. So when you have that awareness, things start to make sense. And you're like, okay, I can start to figure this out now. I can start to ask myself, okay, well, if I've been more in this state of being separate from, then how do I get into a state and how do I maintain a state where I feel connected to? If you're with me, please let me know in the comments. So how do I stay connected? I think about God and being connected to God as my ability to see beauty. And that's just for me personally. Like, part of the reason I'm traveling up the coast of California is because I love beauty. And when I go out to the ocean, as I was just out there, I have this like deeper sense of awareness of connection to God, of connection to my source, because the way that I am created, the way that I've been conditioned as well, my mom and dad love the ocean. We've been to the ocean thousands of times as a family. It brings me life. I love it, and it brings me life, and it recharges me. So part of how you stay connected to your source and to God and to this state of being alive is knowing what brings you that reconnection, right? I actually felt a bit disconnected myself in these last couple of days when they were picking up this dead body, and I was dealing with like the energies of being in this area, specifically this area in these 3 or 4, it's very, very touristy downtown area. And I've noticed, it took me a day or two to realize like, oh, the energies of all of these folks, and just the varying energies of what's going on around here is starting to impact me. I'm leaving today, by the way. And so I myself was experiencing some of that disconnection from my source, because the energies of the environment that you are in have an impact on you. And if you start to take those energies in, it will start to impact you. And so I was definitely feeling the impacts of witnessing all these people who are feeling and clearly in such hard states, along with, seeing this particular person, whose life had ended. So it's one, having that awareness of what brings me back to that connection with God. And so I've had some great opportunities in the last 24 hours, 36 hours to do those things that help reconnect me to my source, to my energy, to my faith in God, in all things working together for my good. And I'm able to maintain now a state of knowing what's happening, right? 5 years ago, this environment, this situation could have easily taken me out, because I do feel so deeply and I'm so keenly aware of energies around me and the different people around me. And when people are suffering greatly, 5 years ago, it would take me out. Now, as a therapist, obviously, I was able to maintain, very well. But ultimately, that is what took me out of my previous life, as I call it, where I was the clinical director of a 150-bed facility and helping all kinds of people, working with this amazing staff of therapists that I supervised. And yet, at the end of the day, it did take me out, right? Because there was so much hardship and so much focus on all the hardship. And I didn't know how life was really operating in a way that allowed me to stay out of that feeling of hopelessness and despair, essentially. And so as I was getting affected by the energies, there's, of course, so much more to the story I won't go into today, but I didn't feel like I could get myself out of that circumstance for various other beliefs that I, believed up until several years ago. And so it slowly started to invade on me and in my mind, like, wow, I can't get out of here. I need to stay. I'm helping all these people. I have all this obligation to my staff, and I have to stay. I have to be available to them. I have to continue to do my part, my contribution, not realizing that I was descending into hell. It sounds very powerful. I haven't talked about it very much yet. This position that I hold now, and this awareness of hell on earth, and how it resides here in our minds. And I know it's offensive to some people, and so it's why I haven't talked about it as much yet, but I'm so excited to be able to talk about it now, because I've studied it. I've seen it in my clients. I've seen it in people over 20 years. I've experienced it myself. And it has helped me so much to be able to live so much more by having an awareness of what the heck was going on with me and what's been going on with people. And ultimately, it's helped me to stay over here in what I call the liberated state. So just that awareness of where I was at up until it was around age 38, 39, 40, where I really felt like must be what it feels like to be in hell, where I couldn't get myself out of it because I didn't believe I could leave certain circumstances. And that feeling of descent into all the anxiety, all of the fear, all of the unknowns of the future. Is my life going to look like this for the next 40 years? Because I don't want to be alive if it's going to look like this for the next 40 years. This is awful, right? And that is what started my own personal transformation journey, is getting to that point in my own mind. I then decided, like, I have to get some serious help that's better than any of the help I've gotten before. I need people who understand how to play the game of life. And I call it the game of life now because it actually does have rules. And there actually are systems in place when you're willing to see them and you're willing to recognize, oh yeah, that has happened to me 1,000 times. Okay, well, it's happened to you 1,000 times because there is a system in place. And when you know the systems and you learn how to use them, life gets so much easier, right? And I'm so passionate about sharing this because I thought I had an awareness of how to play life before, right? Like I said, growing up in church, I had amazing parents. We learned all of this great stuff with church and my initial understandings of God and all of these things. And I thought, like, wow, I'm doing all the right things. Like, for sure, I'm going to school. I'm like very educated, like checking all the right boxes to be a good human being and a believing, faithful human being, right? Who knows God. And I didn't know enough to keep me out of that descent into hell. I didn't know enough to keep me out of an anxiety state of being, a fearful state of being. I didn't know. And now I do. That's the good news, right? Shifting over to that is the good news, is when you learn and you cultivate a learning, right? Because there's all of this pre-programming and all of this preconditioning and all of this belief that you do know. You got to like really condition, hardcore condition, to learn how to do it a different way. And the best way that you can do that is do it with people that have already been on that journey for a hot minute, because they've already learned, right, all of this stuff. And so they can teach you the fast forward version of how to make it happen in a much shorter time for you. That is literally what I do with people now, is I give them the fast forward version, right? The more condensed, more concise, more precise version of how to do life where you feel liberated, where you live liberated. So you're cultivating a sense of how to stay connected with your source, how to have faith in a way that doesn't take you out when hard things happen, how to believe in a God that desires the best for you far more than his concerns. And I'm just giving him a pronoun. I don't think about him that way anymore, but that he cares so much more for you and you living well and living true to yourself and being connected to the truth of who you are, that he's not concerned with all of these man-written rules, right? Even stuff from the Bible that we've held forever and have refused to evolve from, right? We want to hold on to the past of what's written as if it were written in stone, and being unwilling to evolve, to see the new ways of seeing life. So important to evolve. If you don't evolve, you're literally holding on to the past. Even if it is something like holding on to the Bible, in the literal sense of everything that it says, you're just literally holding on to the past. The people that wrote the Bible were people like us who came together, right? I mean, I've written so many things deeply inspired by God, and I've been in small group, these sort of mastermind type of groups, which is very similar to what it was going on, all those years ago, when they get together and they review and they write what is divinely inspired and what is the best way to be living. And let's help the people that we are working with all of the time to be able to have the best ways to live. But they are still limited in their ability to know because they're human. That is just a fact. And so as humans, we have to be willing to evolve, to grow, to learn from history and move forward and apply a new set of understanding, a new set of awarenesses. such that you can continue to live in vibrancy and joy. Because if you're not living in vibrancy and joy and in the rest of God, then you're not playing the game right. Whoever you are, you're just not playing the game right. Because our highest calling is to be in deep relationship with God, in deep joy and experience of our time here on earth, regardless of what's happening in the world around us. So if that's not where you're at, then you need to cultivate a type of faith, a kind of faith that allows you to stay deeply connected to the source of life, to God, to the beauty, to your purpose, to the reason why you're here on the planet, what it is that you are here to contribute, and for you to be able to do that in a way where you're able to stay in that state, even when life gets hard, even when anxiety and fear pop up, that you're able to stay connected in a new way, in a way that doesn't take you out. So I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, this is what I do. This is how I help people. It is my contribution here on earth for the time that we're alive, to be able to help people to essentially create, manifest, evolve the life that they most desire, the life that they feel truly called to be living, to give them the courage to be living it, to teach them the skills to be living it, to teach them the systems that are in place that you can access to live this rich life that I've talked about, that my whole vibe is all about. So I work with people one-on-one for a period of 6 months. You start to see massive changes very shortly after making the decision to allow life to be easier for you and have someone helping you. And by the end of the 6 months, you are so much more in alignment with who your heart and your soul knows that you are meant to be and is calling for you to be. And you create the things that you want in your life, whether that's running your own business, whether that's traveling around the world, whether that's having, a deep, loving relationship with your significant other, whether it's feeling more empowered and more useful in your role as a parent, more capable of passing on and establishing a really rich legacy, right? Of feeling deeply emotionally healthy, physically healthy. I think that's literally probably just one of the most important things for parents to do their own inner work, deal with their own inner wounds and places within them where they are literally passing that stuff on to your kids. That's how it works, right? When we think about generational curses, what we're actually describing is generational patterns of dysfunctional thinking, faulty thinking, of thinking that gets us stuck, of thinking that leads to hell, right? Of thinking that leads to anxiety and fear and self-doubt and putting yourself in unhealthy relationships and unhealthy environments, jobs, whatever it is, and staying, right? Sacrificing yourself. All of these things that we've learned over time, they're really just patterns of behavior and thinking that you then pass on to your kids. That can literally be eradicated by doing this work yourself, which is like mind-blowing, that we could literally eradicate dysfunctional behavior, dysfunctional patterns by being willing to do our own work. So we could leave a legacy of true love and faith and trust. What? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Join me in this adventure to literally eradicating dysfunctional thinking. That is amazing. All right, you guys, as always, thanks for joining me. Thanks for spending time with me. And thank you for being on your own journey towards liberation, because literally the more people that get liberated, the happier the world is and the more sustaining life is. And you literally impact everyone in your world when you are willing to do your own work, which is literally the most powerful way to change the world. All right, I will talk to you next Sunday, if not before. Go do that thing you most want to be doing, and I'll talk to you soon.